you'd like to bring up, Representative Nelson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, we can bring up, and then probably butcher a couple of these names. Becca Butler Dines, Ellie's Wydell, thank you. And Nantiya, Ruan. And this, Madam Chair, is one of our expert witnesses, and we ask for additional allotted time of 10 minutes. It's all free.
We're going to give you all 10 minutes on the clock.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Introduce yourself and who you represent.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, my name is Nantiya Ruan. I'm a professor of the practice of law at the University of Denver Stern College of Law. I am the faculty supervisor for the 11 law students that engaged in an intensive research project this past year that has been referenced several times today. I'm here to answer questions. My students are here to give you a short presentation.
My name is Becca Butler Dines. It's hyphenated. I'm a 2L, so this is my second year in law school at the University of Denver Stern College of Law.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, committee members. My name is Ellie's Wydell, and as Professor Rand mentioned, we are two of the students representing the 11 students who worked on the report Too High a Price, What Criminalizing Homelessness Costs in Colorado. We researched and wrote this report to examine the impact of municipalities around the state creating and enforcing ordinances that either target or disproportionately impact individuals who are homeless.
We wanted to take a few minutes and explain some of the data that we analyzed in the analysis that we took. We first identified 76 municipalities within Denver. All 76 of those were geographically diverse as well as population. The 76 cities took up 70% of the state's population, and out of those 76 cities, we identified 351 ordinances that criminalize homelessness. Cities criminalize homelessness in a variety of ways. There are, as you've heard earlier, there are many bans on sitting, sleeping, lying, or storing belongings in public, restrictions on panhandling or begging, camping bans, loitering and vagrancy prohibitions, as well as the use of trespassing ordinances, park closures, and sanitation laws that explicitly disproportionately criminalize individuals that are homeless. When one municipality adopts an ordinance, such as a camping ban, other municipalities similarly look at the ordinance and often pass the same ordinance. Ordinances lack clarity and often criminalize multiple behaviors in one single ordinance. This lack of clarity makes it very difficult, at times impossible, to track the impact of these ordinances in the context of our research. However, we also recognize that 76 cities was a huge amount of information to collect, so we selected 23 of those 76 cities to do in-depth research, where we utilized CORA requests and Colorado Criminal Justice Records Act to request the number of citations that were issued relating to the ordinances that we had identified that target homeless with between 2010 and 2014.
Highlights of data in our report, though I encourage everybody, we brought extras today if you would like a copy. Otherwise, it is available on the internet if you go to the Denver University Law School website and search for it. Some of our conclusions include that throughout the state, there's a high rate of citing homeless residents. In Grand Junction, 30% of all municipal citations were given under an anti-homeless ordinance. In Fort Collins, 10% of all municipal citations were given under an anti-homeless ordinance. Here in Denver, half of the 2,000 trespass violations given in 2013 and 2014 were issued to individuals who self-identify as homeless, when homeless residents in Denver compose only 0.05% of the city's population. Before we heard about Boulder's liberal use of the camping ban, over the course of 5 years, Boulder issued 1,767 citations under the camping ban, as compared to Denver's 15 or Durango's 0. This is a rate of 2 camping ban citations for every single homeless resident in Boulder. And as was previously noted, 87% of the camping ban citations were given to individuals who self-identified as homeless, whereas they make up less than 0.5% of the city's population. One thing that's worth noting is that our conclusions are actually underrepresented. Several municipalities fail to track the impact of their anti-homeless ordinances on the homeless community, such as Colorado Springs, Aurora, and other cities around the state. Most cities also fail to track move-on orders.
In response to the fact that there are multiple services that are offered across statewide municipalities to try to help alleviate the homeless issues, they're not enough. For example, in Fort Collins, they have 118 shelter beds for 400 homeless individuals. In Boulder, there's 280 shelter beds for 440 homeless individuals. This means that 160 homeless residents of Boulder are subject to the city's aggressive camping ban. In addition to identifying that there was limited services for the number of individuals who are forced to sleep on our local streets every night, we examined the costs. Even though the cost that we came up with was $750,000 that Denver spent alone in enforcing 5 ordinances, and when you put that aside, $47 million that they're going to spend, it doesn't seem like a lot. However, we would ask that you recognize that utilizing criminal enforcement is an ineffective and expensive policy in addressing homelessness. Rather, communities should address the root causes behind why an individual is sleeping on a bench, standing by the side of the road asking for money, or sitting in a park after hours with no other place to go. By focusing resources at combating the causes of homelessness, instead of criminalizing and arresting individuals for having to participate in life-sustaining activities, you will finally begin to close the revolving door that circulates individuals experiencing homelessness from the street to the criminal justice system and back.
That's a complex problem. Cities continue to enforce facially neutral laws in a disproportionate way. Statewide legislation is necessary to stop the criminalization of individuals for life-sustaining activities simply because they are unhoused. That is why we support HB 1191, the right to rest.
Thank you. Members, questions? Representative Arndt.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I represent Fort Collins, and you named Fort Collins a few times in here. Did you ever call the city of Fort Collins to verify some of the data or discuss some of the conclusions you reached from the data?
Who would like
So, in all of the municipalities that we obtained data from, we reached directly out to the city through the structured way that you obtain records. And so we worked directly with the city. The city was the one who gave us the information.
Thank you. Representative Arndt.
Thank you. I have several.
Sure.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So did you speak to someone at the city, or did you just attend the records through like court or something like that?
Ms. Simmons?
I believe that we spoke with someone from Fort Collins. We spoke to multiple different individuals represented through all different municipalities. I personally did not work on the Fort Collins section. However, I know that in our work with different municipalities, we did reach out to all different constituents.
Representative Arndt?
So sometimes data doesn't tell the whole story, and I was just wondering if you found out what happens in Fort Collins when someone goes to a shelter and there's not a bed. Do you know what happens then?
Oftentimes, and this is a statewide trend,
In Fort Collins, I'm asking.
yes, oftentimes I believe that an individual is forced to have to sleep on the street or in a park.
Ms. Arndt?
Thank you, Madam Chair. In Fort Collins, they receive a hotel voucher.
Representative Salazar.
Madam Chair, let's just please note for the committee that she didn't work on the Fort Collins aspect of it. If we had someone here who did work on the Fort Collins aspect of it, then they'd probably be able to answer the questions better. But I just think that it's unfair for the witness to answer questions that she didn't work on.
Representative Arndt.
That's okay, and you can say you didn't know, that's okay. So I'm just curious because when it forms part of your testimony, it makes it look like Fort Collins hasn't done a good job responding to people who are homeless, and I'd just like to get it on the record that some of the raw data that says how many beds we have and how many homeless doesn't reflect the entire community efforts to address a very critical and important issue in our community that we're working extremely hard to resolve. Not in a perfect way, but in a very honest and heartfelt way.
Thank you,
Speaking of
Representative
honesty,
Representative
not
Singer.
everyone gets a voucher when they get
Thank
kicked
you, Madam Chair.
out.
Questions? I hope you got an A on the project, mostly because I don't know what getting an A feels like, and I hope it's good. But I had a couple questions. I saw, one of the things that you mentioned here is there are specific cities that have enacted ordinances. And this is a bill that attempts to create almost a statewide standard. And so, were the conclusions that you drew out of this that the state should sort of enforce a statewide standard somewhere, or that individual cities should take it upon themselves to create tailored approaches?
Ms. Dean, or would you like to answer?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Representative. As I mentioned before, addressing these city by city or individual case by individual case insufficiently addresses a complex problem. That is why statewide legislation is necessary.
Representative Singer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll move on. One of the other components of your report, which I've got here, says that it noted a number of things like page 23, we talked about loitering or vagrancy citations between 2010 and 2014. But it doesn't specify how many of those violations were related to homelessness. And so I'm just wondering, can you parse out, or is there really the ability to parse out in a lot of these situations, crimes that we might assume are related to homelessness, as opposed to crimes that we know are directly, attributed to an individual experiencing homelessness?
Cities or municipalities track the impact on homeless individuals. We are able to parse that data for other ordinances. And again, we focused primarily on ordinances around the state that either target homeless individuals, such as camping bans, or disproportionately impact homeless populations, such as loitering or trespassing.
Further questions? Representative Singer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think I'll just ask one more here. So on page 30, a lot of people have been talking about Utah and what's happening in Utah, and sort of holding them up as an example, which, I hope we can look to other states to find new ideas or ideas that are working so we don't have to come up with new ideas. It cites the Housing First program there and saying it's decreased homelessness by 72%. It only speaks about chronically homeless people have been decreased by 72%. So the overall impact might look a little bit different. And so I'm wondering if you can talk about the overall impact on homelessness, what percentage that was, as opposed to the impact on chronic homelessness.
Who would like to address that? Ms. Dean?
Thank you. The reason that we identified Housing First programs as well as rapid rehousing was for specifically that. Housing First programs often only focus on chronically homeless, yet rapid rehousing can deal with individuals who have been on the streets for multiple years. The quote that you're specifically pointing to is a quote from the director of the Housing First program within Utah. I think that Utah has gotten some criticism in the sense that they feel that it is only addressed the chronically homeless. Yet we feel that if both resources are put towards the Housing First program as well as rapid rehousing, you help alleviate that concern.
Thank you, Representative Singer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Not to put too fine a point on it, and if you just don't know or the information wasn't provided, that's fine. I'm just curious if there's any concept of how homelessness as a whole was alleviated in Utah, whether there was overall it was 10% as opposed to 72% or 50%, or whether that information just isn't available.
I apologize. I do not know that specific number. I apologize. We weren't specifically looking in terms of Utah.
Thank you.
Representative Williams.
Madam Chair, you and from my discussions about various universities, with various universities, they've been opposed to this bill. And the reason being that there's a fear that, that the passage of this bill could cause homeless individuals to camp in their university properties. What is your sense? Do you agree with that assessment?
Who would like to respond to that?
And as a faculty member of the University of Denver, I'm not aware that University of Denver has taken a stance. We are here as a representatives of our class that did this research, and so our findings and conclusions we feel are solid, and we support the bill. If you're asking about higher education, which was spoken of before, I believe that there was some discussion around the amendment on that issue.
Thank you. Representative
But, so my question is, and there's specific cities mentioned here in different ordinances, Durango, Aurora, a number of them. But I didn't see, about 10 years ago, maybe not quite 10 years ago, the city of Denver had a goal of doing away with homelessness in 10 years. Has there been any measurement since about 10 years ago when they had that goal? Because what I'd like to do is look at the programs and the services that they've put in place and the ordinances over the last 10 years to see. I think there was another question from Representative Singer. Since 2012 and the anti-camping ban, the question was to the representative of Denver, has homelessness gone up or has it gone down? What I'd like to see is, since that goal was announced by the mayor of Denver almost 10 years ago that they were going to do away with homelessness in 10 years, what has the data showed?
Ms. Deans?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Representative. I believe that I will just be quoting information from a phenomenal article that was done by the Westward. But specifically to the point of Denver did create a 10-year plan, and I would direct you to look at Denver Road Home. They have been the organization that came out of that 10-year plan that has more specific data on the successes and failures of the process between those 10 years. I also would like you to note that the point-in-time surveys that the City of Denver mentioned, they are the best way for us to be able to calculate the number of homeless. Yet over those 10 years, the definition of who meets, who is defined as homeless has changed. And so for 1 year, you might have a number that says one thing, yet for another year, you'll have a different number, and that might not be a valid representation of actually everyone who is homeless. So to get to your point of, what is, in 10 years ago, what was the number and what is it today, is really hard to calculate due to the changes in definitions.
Thank you. Further questions?
Just as an alum of DU Law School, I'm just very proud that they're here and that they've taken on such a huge endeavor of studying this issue. And thank you for allowing me to thank them for being here.
Thank you.